Boker Tov Moadim L'Simcha. Today's daf is Daf Yud Gimel. We learned today for Aliyas Neshama of Chaim Tzvi ben Shalom Cooperman, whose yahrzeit is today, and we also continue to learn for Refuah Shlema for Akiva ben Chai Rachel, who needs a refuah and the Yeshua. Says the Gemara, we're at the second of the wide lines on Daf Yud Gimel Ben Alpha. We left off yesterday. Yosef Zacha. Yosef was Zacha. Why? In what sense? That he buried his father, and because of that, he was buried by the leader of Bnei Yisrael. At the time that, since Yosef was himself a leader, and he took charge and led the funeral of Yaakov Avinu, so he was Zocha, that the greatest person that later on, Moshe Rabbeinu, took part in his burial. So the Gemara, Masha Mikar, when it talks about Yosef taking up his father Yaakov, Masha Mikar Yosef, he went up to take up his father, and all his servants, the Egyptians, also came up with him. And then afterwards it says, first you mention the Egyptians, and then you say the whole house of Yosef and his brothers and his father's whole household. So why first you mention the Egyptians, and then later on Yaakov's whole family? Later on, when they came back, it says, Vayoshav Yosef Mitzrayma. When they returned, Yosef came back. First it mentions his brothers, meaning Yaakov's family. Then you mention all the other entourage, including the Egyptians. Why are the Egyptians mentioned? In the first case, they're mentioned first, and then later on they're mentioned at the end. Before they saw the honor that was bestowed upon Yaakov, they didn't give him such kavod. They didn't see the great honor that they hadn't seen it yet until the burial took place. After they saw the kavod that Bnei Yisrael gave to Yisrael, to Yaakov, they gave him. The Sivit says, they came when they went there, they came at Goren Atad. Goren Atad was a place, the granary of Atad. But Atad is really like thorns or bushes. Do people make a granary out of bushes and thorns? People don't make a granary out of that. They make a granary out of grain. What happened was they surrounded the Aron. The bier of Yaakov was surrounded by crowns. Kagoran, like a granary, that they put bushes and brambles, thorns around a goran to protect it. So the same way over here, that's why it was called Goranota, because they put crowns around Yaakov's coffin. Shabo Sham B'nai Esav. B'nai Esav came, but in other words, the other members, right? Not only the B'nai Esav, of course, Yaakov's nephews, B'nai Yishmael, or B'nai Keturah, the whole family, the extended family came for the funeral. Tanakum and Muhammad, they really came to fight against the B'nai Yisrael, the B'nai Yaakov. Once they saw the crown of Yosef, who was the king of Egypt, the viceroy of Egypt, hanging on the Aron of Yaakov, they all felt they melted. They didn't want to fight anymore. So they all took their crowns. The Talmud Aron Yaakov, they hung them on the Aron of Yaakov. They themselves, in other words, the family of Esav and Yishmael. Rashi means there were 36 crowns on the Aron of Yaakov. One was that of Yosef, and the other ones, Rashi points out, were the Nesiim of Yishmael and the Alufim of Yishmael, the other extended family. They put them all in there. They carried out a great eulogy there, great, heavy, sore. Like it was really like crying out, "Mo, even the horses and the donkeys took part in it." Some say, they neighed and they brayed. Marsha says they dressed them. You ever see like when they have you'll see it when they're going to have the coronation soon, right? Of King Charles. Yeah. They're going to have the horses also dressed. So here, what they did in those days was that they would dress the horses with black garments also to show the bereavement. So he says that even they took part. When they came to Marsa Machpelah, where they were going to bury Yaakov Avinu, also Esav showed up. Kamakav, he didn't let him in. I'm going to let him listen. Mamre Kiryas Arba hi Chevron, right? Mamre is the Kiryas Arba, the city of four, meaning the four couples, Chevron. he wasn't quoting Rav Yitzchak, but he explained. Rav Yitzchak says Kiris Arba. Why is it called Kiris Arba? Arba Zukas. There were 4 couples there. Anna Mechava, Avram Basar, Yitzchak, Rivka, Yaakov, Leah. Okay, at that point, how many were in there? 7, right? Yaakov was about to be buried, right? Leah was already buried there. Iu covered Leah. So Esav said, look, he buried Leah, his wife, there, right? B'dideh in his spot. In other words, there were 2 spots left. One for, he took 1 spot for Leah. That was Yaakov gave Leah his spot. The other spot's mine. You couldn't put Yaakov in there. I belong in Marsville. There was only room for 8. There was only 8. There were 2, 4 pairs or 8 burial spots. The other one's mine. He didn't want to let him bury Yaakov there. Amalei Zavin said, you sold it. You sold your share. I sold my firstborn rights, right? My Bechora. But I didn't sell all my rights. I'm still a brother. So he doesn't get a double, the double share. I gave him the extra share, right? But I'm still equal to him as a regular brother. I'm not a Bechor anymore, but I'm still a regular brother. There were 2 spots left. He took one for his wife. The other one's mine. Amalei, hey, no. He took that one too. The Siv, the Kibriya Shekabisili. Yaakov said, I buried her in the kever, and he said to bury me in the kever that I dug there. Means selling. Kira doesn't just mean digging, could also mean selling. In the seaside places, they call that kira. So he says, I bought it. I bought the whole thing, and you're right. The Bechor, I'm not talking about the Bechor, but Yaakov, who is dead now, they said he had bought that spot from Esav. Amalahu. So Esav said, you got the star? Do you have the bill of sale? Do you have a receipt? As they say, do you have any proof? You have a receipt that I sold it? Well, it's all with the papers back in Egypt, right? The file cabinet is down there. So Umane, so how are we going to get it now? They're standing here in Morris Machpelah and Kiryas Arba, a few miles down the road from here. How are they going to get back to Egypt? Not going to schlep all the way back to Egypt. Who's going to go? Nezel Naftali. Let's send Naftali to Kalil Kielsa, because he's as swift, as fast as a deer. He runs real fast. The Siv Naftali Ayalash Lufa. He's like a sent out, a deer that's sent out. I know Rav Meir Shapiro who gives nice words. Amar Bavu, I'll take Imre Shefer, Ella Imre Sefer, right? That Imre Sefer, that meaning Imre Sefer, the Sefer, meaning they had to bring proof now, right? It was like he was going to bring proof of what was going on, of the star, right? So that's apparently maybe one Imre Sefer, the nice words of Torah, or it could be the Sefer, the proof of purchase. You need a receipt. So what happened then? Chushim braided Dan. Chushim, who was a son of Dan. Dan was one of the sons, right? One of Yaakov's sons was Dan, and Chushim was his son. Tamar, he was there, like with the rest of the family. He had heavy ears, meaning he couldn't hear. He was hard of hearing. Amlu, he said, Maya, what's going on over here? What's this tumult? What's this fight about over here? He couldn't hear Esav talking. He didn't know what was going on. Amulei, and they told him, come on, give high. Esav is holding us back from the burial. Until Naphtali comes back from Eretz Mitzrayim with the bill of sale. Amalu ba'adas Naphtali until he schleps back until he comes back. Yehei Avi Abba, my grandfather, that was Yaakov, his Chushim's grandfather. Mutal Buzayin needs to be laying here in Buzayin out in the heat. He's going to be laying here until he comes back from Mitzrayim for days and days. Shakul Kufi took a stick machia reshe and he smashed it on Esav's head. Natranene, he was killed and his eyes fell out. Naflu, and his eyes fell out. Akar Yaakov by the feet of Yaakov. Paschinu Yaakov and Yaakov opened his eyes when he saw that, and he laughed, smiled. And the Yismach Tzadik Yichaza, the Tzadik will be happy when he sees Nakam, when he sees the revenge that he's going to get. And this is what happened over here. You wonder what happened to what happened to the rest of Esav's entourage. They didn't seem to fight back. They couldn't handle it. So Pa'amav Kichaza, the pasuk goes on Yismach Tzadik Kichaza, Nakam Kichaza Nakam, Pa'amav Yerchetz B'Dama Rasha, his feet will be washed in the blood of the Rasha. In other words, if to say that here Yaakov, look what happened. Yaakov's grandson took the lead, killed Esav there, and that's how they settled the issue right then. At that point, the prophecy of Rivka came true. The Chsiv says, remember, she said, why should I be bereaved of both of you? Why should I lose both of you in one day? They didn't both die in the same day because Yaakov died in Egypt and Esav died right there. Even though they both didn't die in the same day, for us, but the burial was on the same day. Says the Gemara, if Yosef hadn't taken charge of Yaakov's burial, in other words, why did they? The question is not that wouldn't they have done it, but why did they allow Yosef to take the whole thing? They were just as responsible for their father's burial, including Reuven and all the other brothers. Why did they leave it to Yosef? Also, Banav Artikran, they all took part in it. Why did they leave Yosef to lead the funeral? Amru, they said, Hanichu, look, the honor of Yaakov is greater if a king, Yosef was a king, if he takes charge. If he takes charge and he takes part and leads the funeral, that's more covered for our father, for our late father, Yaakov. Milan go be Yosef. So of course, because Yosef was the greatest and he took charge of the funeral, so Moshe, he was zocher that Moshe, the greatest person at that time, took part in his funeral. Look how great, how dear the mitzvahs are on Moshe. When they were all leaving Egypt, Pesach now, right? They were all leaving Egypt in a rush, and they were taking the spoils of Egypt. He was also in the mitzvah. What was the mitzvah? Burial of the dead, burial of Yosef. The smart person will take the mitzvahs. You take the cash, I'll take the mitzvahs. How did Moshe know where Yosef was buried? After all, he had been buried many years before. So how did he know where to take his body up? Amru Sarach Basasha had lived for hundreds of years. She lived a very long life. She remained alive from that door when Yosef had died. Halach Moshe Etzla. Moshe went to her. Amrlo, do you know where Yosef is buried? Amrlo, she told him, Aron Shel Mateches, he had a metal coffin. Also Mitzrayim, the Mitzrayim this for him, also Mitzrayim or Mitzrayim. The Kavu ben Els, and they put it in the Nile River, so that the waters of the Nile would be fruitful and plenty, because as Rashi explains, Egypt doesn't get rainwater, enough rainwater to supply them. They're all living from the Nile, as we see today when the fights in Africa are taking place, right, with Ethiopia, etc. If the Egyptians shut off the Nile from going downstream, everybody else starves. The whole Egypt is supplied by the water of the Nile. So they put it in there so that they put Yaakov's kever in there, Yosef's kever in there, so that the water should be blessed. Halach Moshe, he stood by the bank of the Nile. Amalo, Yosef. He yelled out. He didn't know where it was, somewhere in the Nile River. Go figure where it is. The time has come that Hashem had sworn, that I'm going to redeem you from Egypt. And now it's time, the shvur that you swore Bnei Yisrael, you forswore Bnei Yisrael to, that we're going to take up Halisemas Asmosai and Mizeretchem. If you show yourself, look, fine, we'll take you. If we don't know where you are and you don't show yourself, then we are free of the Yeshua. The Yad Safar Rosh Yosef. So right away, the Aron of Yosef, even though it was made out of iron, right? Metal, it was iron. It floated to the top. How can metal float? How can iron float in the water? You shouldn't ask a question. How can iron float in the water? Sure. Exhibit says later on by Elisha, it says one of his students here, Mapila Korah, he was cutting down a beam. That's a barzel nafalamayim, and the axe head flew into the water. And he said, what I'm going to do now? I don't have the axe head anymore. And it's borrowed. It's not even mine. Borrowed from somebody. Yomei came unenough. Where did it fall into the water? He saw him the place where it fell in the water. He took a piece of wood. Elisha threw it there. And that caused the barzel, the axe head, to float up. And so you see that even miraculously, under the power of great people, even metal or iron can float. Elisha was a Talmud student of Eliyahu, Talmud of Moshe. In other words, Elisha wasn't even the student of Moshe. He learned his Torah, but he didn't come in contact with Moshe. So because of Elisha Tzaf Barzel Mipanav, the Barzel floated. And Moshe Ben Lachas Kamakama certainly would float. So that's what happened, and it floated to the top. Rav Nosson gives a slightly different version. It wasn't in the Nile River, but the Kabarnet Shamalachim Haya. He was buried in the tomb of all the kings, the Egyptian kings there. Cover. Halach Moshe Ben Malkam, and he stood there by the tomb Shamlachim. Amar Yosef said the same thing. Yosef, the time has come that Hashem has said, I will redeem you. And I will free you from Egypt. And now the time that you swore Bnei Israel to take your bones up. If you show yourself, what to find him not. We are free of your shvur because we've done our efforts. He didn't know which was the Aron of Yosef, right? It was a big sepulcher, the big tomb there, and many kings were buried there. All right away, Yosef's tomb, his coffin shook. So he knew that was it. Not the Moshe took it, but the Eslo took it. All the years that they went through the Midbar to Eretz Yisrael, show Yisrael by Midbar, all the years that they were in Midbar, they had two aros, they had two boxes, two chests. One was a coffin, one was the Shechina, where they had the tablets, the two tablets were in there. They were walking, and these two were carried together. The two coffins. So I over some people who passed by said, Omer, what do you have these two boxes for? What are these two chests for? Omer Echad Shemes, one is a coffin of Yosef. Echad Shechina, one belongs to the Shechina, one is Hashem. Do you put a mace with the Shechina? Is that proper? Amru Kaim Zeh Kamasha Kosabazeh. Yosef fulfilled everything that was written in the Torah, which had the chest of the Luchos and the Torah. Rashi brings down that it says that there's a Godam Fereshus that it says Anochi, it says Anochi, and it says in other words, Yosef said something corresponding to what was written in the Torah, and he goes through each pasuk about the Torah, about Shabbos. He says, you prepare. What do you mean prepare? When he told him to prepare, it was Shabbos. He prepared it for Shabbos. So he shows that Yosef fulfilled everything, even in Egypt when he was a viceroy. He fulfilled everything that was written there. So the more same kash we had before. Moshe had Moshe not take part. Yisrael lo have maskmei. Bnei Yisrael, his brothers, etc., and all the children wouldn't have. Why didn't they take place? Why did they allow Moshe to take place, to take the lead? They did take part in the burials. We know Moshe, as we mentioned the other day, Moshe didn't actually go into Eretz Yisrael to bury him, but he took the lead. So you see that the Asmas Yosef, Bnei Yisrael, his brothers and his children and their children, they all took part in it. All Bnei Yisrael took part in it. So why does Moshe have a lead? They buried him in Shechem eventually in the chelik of Yosef. Vasu Ilo Asik Bnei Yisrael, bottom of Masbeh, weren't his own sons, weren't Yosef's sons. Where they buried Yosef was in the chelik of Yosef, and he had children. His children were there too. His children would have buried him. Why didn't they take the lead? Amra anichalo. Let Moshe do it. Photo, but Merub Yosef, number one, his son said, let the whole Bnei Israel. We don't want to just do it ourselves. To all Bnei Israel, his covenant is greater with the multitude rather than just a small amount of people. The Suam, and they said, his covenant is greater covenant for him, just like the Bnei Yaakov had said that it's better to have the king lead them. Same thing. Kvodo b'gdolim Yosef becomes greater honor for Yosef with Gedolim, with Moshe, rather than us who are lesser people. Cover Mishchem, they buried Mishchem. Why did they bury him in Shechem? Why after that spot? He was stolen. They took him out of Shechem. That's where it says where it says over there that Dosa, Rashi says it's not even a place. It was because of the story that took place. Wasn't even named. They took him out of Shechem. Therefore they put him back in Shechem. In other words, that's where he was stolen from, and that's where he was returned to. There's a steer in the pasuk. It says Moshe was the one who buried him. So who was it? Who took up the bones? Moshe took them, or Bnei Yisrael? If you start something, you don't finish it, and somebody else finished it. In Yiddish, you say if a person starts a job and doesn't finish it, it's called a chatzi malacha, right? He doesn't do the whole thing, right? The one who finishes it gets credit. Somebody else came with Gamru, The one who finished it is considered as if he did the whole thing. Rabbi Elazar Amar and Rabbi Elazar Achmar Rinos and Mikulaso. So therefore, even though Moshe started it, obviously God didn't let him in, so they finished it. So Bnei Israel are considered the ones who brought him up, even though Moshe started it. Rabbi Elazar says not only does the person who finished it get credit for the whole thing, but the person who started it and didn't finish it in general, unless there's some excuse for it, right? He's removed from his gedula. The Sivit says, Yehuda. What happened? Yehuda started to save Yosef. Remember, he started arguing with his brothers and he wanted to save them, but he didn't finish the job, right? He didn't save him at the end. So because of that, he was also removed from his gedula. He was degraded, right, or reduced, demoted, reduced in stature. He will even bury his wife and children. The Siva says, he lost his wife. He lost his children. So because he didn't finish the job, in other words, you have a job, you should finish it. Don't let others do it. And in this case, the case of Yosef, nobody finished it, right? They took him out. He says, he told them, take up my bones. When he was still alive, he said, take up my bones, right? So why was he called bones when he was still alive? They covered up because he didn't object when the honor of his father was when his father was offended. How's that? The Kamilei Abducha Avinu. Remember when the brothers first came down, they didn't know Yosef was Yosef. They thought he was the king of Egypt. They said, Abducha Avinu, our father, your servant. He didn't say, he heard his father being degraded, like his father's his servant, and he should have said something, and he didn't. Why did Yosef die before his brothers? He acted with leadership. He acted like a big shot. In other words, he took pride in his he took too much pride in his stature. He was the leader, he took the lead. He was the Rosh, too much of Rosh. Better to maintain a low profile. The Yosef word, it doesn't mean Rabbanis like being a rabbi. It means leadership, The Yosef word of Mitzrayim. Yeah. Right. So he's a rabbanut. The Yosef word of Mitzrayim. Yosef was taken out of Mitzrayim. Amar Blazer Altikar Hurat Elahorid was mean not that he was taken out of Mitzrayim. He also lowered them. He was the one. He was the cause. Horid is a causative. He caused others to be lowered. Horid it's Paro. The soothsayers of Paro were lowered. Why? Because they couldn't interpret the dreams, and he could. Like Potifar, Sris Paro. Potifar, the Sris Paro. Sris Paro is usually translated as the officer, right? One of his officers bought him. Amrav Shekanu Latzmo. He bought him for himself. In other words, for Mishku Zafar. He wanted him because Yosef was very good looking. He wanted him for a homosexual relationship. Amrav Shekanu Latzmo. So the Gerson, if you, in the parentheses, is Bar Gabriel. So Gabriel came and castrated Potiphar. Bar Gavrilu Paro. Paro is a bigger castration on the side. He says that Circe is with the testicles, and Piro means he took off the whole aver, his whole penis. So a bigger castration. If you don't know the gear, it says Bar Gavrilu Piro Mikarksif Potiphar L'Basov Potifera. Piro's lashon is if to say that he was originally Potiphar, now he's Potiphar without his genitals. So that's what happened here. Milan Ugalam and Moshe, who was written Moshe, Moshe goes on to tell a story. Moshe, Ravlach, Hashem says, Ravlach, Hashem didn't want to let him come into Eretz Yisrael. Enough. Amar Levi, but Rav Biser, Moshe used the lashon of Rav when he says Rav Lachem b'nei Levi, but Rav Bisru, therefore he was also. In other words, everything is Mida Keneged Mida, like we said, like this whole mission was about, right? That Moshe said Rav Lach, and Hashem told him also Rav Lach. Rav Biser, Rav Lachem b'nei Levi, when he talked to the Bnei Korach, Rav Lachem b'nei Rav Bisru, and he was also told by Rav Lach, enough for you, don't ask anymore. Davar Acher, Rav Lach, Rav Yeshlach. You have a new rabbi. Umanu, who's that? Yoshua. Davar Acher, Rav Lach, Shalayom Rav Kamakosha. It's enough. Don't argue with me anymore. You shouldn't say that the Rav meaning of Baruch Shalom is too difficult, doesn't want to give in. The Talmud Kamasavar and Talmud Moshe is persistent. Don't bother me anymore with this thing. People will say that I'm not giving in and you're too persistent. According to the camel is the load, meaning because Moshe Rabbeinu was such a great tzaddik, therefore Hashem was medactic with him, even though the sin that he did didn't seem so great, and Hashem didn't want to give in. Why? Because he was so great. Because Moshe was great, therefore Hashem dealt with him on a higher level than other people. And he said, I'm 120 years old today. We just had this the other day also. Today is my birthday. Today I finished all my days and my years. To teach Hashem completes the days of tzaddikim from day to day, meaning he lets them in other words, month to month, day to day, right? That he gives them a complete year, a complete that they live a full year, not a partial. The number of your days I will fill. I can't go out and in anymore. What does it mean? I can't go out anymore. That he became weak, elderly. He became fragile, frail. He was 120 years old, but Moshe when he died, his force was not abated at all. He was, totally 100% good. When he died, he went from Mars Malva Hadavo. By the time we learned the Brisa, there were 12 steps there. He jumped all 12 steps at one shot. So obviously he was at full force, even on the day that he died. He wasn't able to learn anymore. The gates of wisdom God had closed up against him. He wasn't able to learn anymore. Moshe and Yeshua went and they said, Tana also Shabbos that week was that Shabbos that week was that day of Shabbos was a pair of leaders on that day, right? It was just Mizeh. It was taken from Moshe, and as Moshe started off in the morning, and later on that day, Yeshua took over, and it was given to Yeshua. That's what Rashi says that Yeshua. The beginning of the day means that week, maybe every day of that week. In the morning, Moshe taught. In the evening, Yeshua taught. Who wouldn't need the pasuk say the Shalom, and you couldn't say it. You couldn't say this on your own. Where is he buried? The Chelko Sharuven. The pasuk doesn't make sense. Pasuk says that where did he die? He died in the chelik in the inheritance in the area of Ruvain. El Har Nevo. He went up to Har Nevo. The Nevo b'Chelko Sharuven kind of. The Nevo is in the share of Ruvain, in the chelik of Ruvain. The Sibum Ruvain Banu. They built different cities for Es Nevo. So he died in Nevo. That's where they all died. Nevo, Shisham, Meis, Gimel, Nevi, Moshe, Aramir, they all died there. Where is he buried? Because that's where the chelik of Mechokek, the lawgiver, that's Moshe. So he's buried in the chelik of God. So he died in one place, he's buried in another place. How far is it from one another? 4 miles or 4 Talmudic miles or Persian miles, a long distance. Who took him from where to there? Nobody knows where he's buried. Who buried him? It says Hashem buried him. So who took him there? He was on the wings of the Shekhinah. We're singing along. In other words, they were wailing at the funeral of Moshe. And Hashem took him on his wings, so to speak. And the Malach Hasharis were singing Tzidk Hashem. So they were maspid him. They eulogized him this way. And Hashem himself was saying, who's now going to fight against my enemies? Who is going to stand up for me against those the dealers of iniquity? Who is like a smart one like this? Who is the one who's going to be able to make a compromise? Rashi says, who's able to make a pshara, a compromise between me and my flock, my children. Who's going to be able to do that? Who's going to take his place? So where's we're going to find Chachma? Moshe, and Moshe died there. Moshe, that's where he died. Samayin Omar, Moshe, Sefer Rabbi Yisrael. He explained that. What does it mean? Who was Moshe? The great scribe of Israel, the great leader of Israel, the great Talmud Chacham. For an area of 12 miles by 12 miles, a large area. Israel, opposite the whole Benach Israel was there. Baskol Mashmiya, the Baskol gave a voice, sent out a voice and said, and was made to heard. Vayomas Moshe Safer Rabbi Israel, like Samalia, who was a Chacham, said the same. That's what the Baskol said. Samalia repeated what the Baskol had said, that Moshe has died. In other words, they didn't see him die. They didn't bury him, right? He died in one place. Hashem called out, like the Baskol went out. Moshe, the great scribe of Israel, has died. The Yesham Lomes, or some say he actually didn't die. He died there. He was with God. He was with God. Just like there, he was standing and serving God. So it doesn't really mean from the word sham, you see that he didn't actually die. It's like he died, but he didn't actually die. Shem buried him by guy in the valley of Eretz Moab, in the land of Moab, Mul base for opposite place. In other words, he tells you where he's buried. He's in the valley, in the land of Moab, opposite base Por. We're giving you a good sign. There's a green sign there that tells you where he's buried, right? They're all looking for him. Still, even though we have all these signs, so nobody actually knows where he's buried. The Romans had already sent Eitzel Gistra, Shel Base Por. They sent to the governor of Base Por in Moab. Show us where Moshe is buried, right? Or why didn't they show us where he's buried? We want to know he's buried. They stood on top, like from a high point. It looked like it. They saw his burial spot below. They stood below. It looked like he was buried above. Nechleku, the shteikitos, they divided into two groups. Listen, it doesn't seem right. We're up here. He looks like he's down there. He's down there. Let's divide into two, and we'll really figure it out. That was they divided into two groups. The ones who stood above, they looked like he was below. If you stood below, so they had the approximate place where he was buried, but they didn't know exactly. So nobody knows where he's buried. Rav Chanina, Amar Af Moshe Rabbeinu cover. Even Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know where he's buried. It's mashma from here that most people, when they're buried, they know where they're buried, right? Moshe didn't know where he was buried, but mashma that most people would know. It says nobody knows where he's buried. No person knows. Right? Even Moshe, even Moshe himself. Moshe is the ish. He's the man, right? He's the man. He doesn't know. Even he doesn't know where he's buried. Why is he buried? To atone for the sin of worshiping the Peor. We should follow God. He's a consuming fire. You can't walk with the Shekhinah. We should follow in his characteristics, his midos. Right? Just like he dresses those who don't have clothes. That's for Adam and Chava, his wife, Kosnos, or he made them shirts out of hide. You should also dress the poor, the ones who don't have any clothes. There's Baruch Hu, Biker Cholim. He visited the sick of Sibayar Shem Elah. Hashem visited Avram after he had the bris milah. Visiting sick. We should also visit the sick. He comforts the bereaved. The siv. After Avram died, Hashem blessed Yitzchak Beno. He visited Yitzchak and he told him, he says, Nichmo al Aviv, ubercho berchas avelim. He gave him the bracha of avelim, says Rashi. He gave him the bracha. You should also comfort the bereaved. Kosh Baruch Hu cover mason buries the dead. The Seveik Brosa Bagai. Avatak for mason. You should also bury the dead. The Bach. There's a very long Bach over here. Take a look at the Bach. There's only one sim in there. Aleph. He brings the gift before this last Russia of that you should follow in Hashem's ways. Look. I'm reading it inside. The goes Bach. He brings out another thing Rav Chanina said. Why was Moshe's burial spot hidden? Right? Nobody could see it. So Rabbi Wein always says, because otherwise they'd be selling postcards there. It would be a tourist spot. They'd make a big carnival out of it. He says like this: that the base about the Mikdash were going to be destroyed. Well, the goal is destroyed, and the people will go in, and the Jews will go into exile. Shemi Yavo look for us, and maybe they'll come to if they knew where Moshe was buried, they'd come to his kever. At that time, and they would stand there crying. Moshe, and they will beg Moshe. They will tell Moshe Rabbeinu, and they will say Moshe Rabbeinu, Amovit Tefillah about them, stand up, daven for us. Moshe, and Moshe would get up, so to speak, in his burial spot, and he would nullify the entire decree of the destruction of Beis Hamikdash and the exile. That's why people go to the burial spots of the tzaddikim. that tzaddikim are more dear when they're dead than when they're alive. Shekenat Motzi b'Shasha Yisrael b'Midbar. When they were in the Midbar, v'sarchu, and they sinned, v'masayim v'asu egel, and they made egel. Kasav Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Hashem got angry at Israel, and he was going to destroy them. V'amar Moshe, harif mina, stay away from me again. I'll destroy them all. Kama tzaddikim hayibasur. There are many tzaddikim. Kama chasidim. Moshe, Aaron, Yoshua, Eldad, Umeidad, V'ayins Kenim, V'shar Chacham V'tamidim. V'lo asa b'shvil. Hashem didn't save Bnei Israel because of any of those. V'lo bita like Zera El b'shvil Moshe, only because of Moshe. So Hashem was afraid that that's if he would let people know where Moshe was buried, they would go, and whenever there'd be when destruction was imminent, they would come to Moshe and he would pray and he would be mevatel l'gzeira of Hashem. That's why he didn't let them. Hashem wanted to carry out his plan of destruction and exile, and that's why he didn't let us know where Moshe was buried. What kind of shirts did he make? Clothing, whatever he made for these shirts or tunics, whatever he made for them out of it. What does it mean? Something that came from hide, meaning wool, something you're worn like on the outside, an abergam. Something that the skin enjoys, which is more like linen, flax, which linen is made from flax, and something that really went right on the skin, meaning like an undershirt or a shirt that went right on the skin, not an outer garment made out of wool. Something like Torah Tchilas Mitzchanim, the Torah at the beginning is Milas Chesed, the Sofik Milas Chesed. Tchilas Milas Chesed, the Seva Yas Hashem Lakim Adam Lishto, Kasas Norvation. You see, Hashem did a Chesed at the beginning. He made them clothing. They didn't have any clothing. The Sofik Milas Chesed at the end is also Milas Chesed there. The Siva says Vayikbro Sabagai. Hashem buried Moshe in the valley. So you see that the beginning of the Torah is Milas Chesed, and the end is Milas to teach us how important Milas Chesed is. Why did Moshe want so much to become into Eretz Yisrael? He begged Hashem, and Hashem said, "Don't bother me anymore. You're not going into Israel." Why did he want so much to go into Eretz Yisrael? Famous line. He wanted to eat the fruits, or to satiate himself from the goodness, from the great products of Eretz Yisrael. This is what Moshe said. There are many mitzvahs that Bnei Yisrael, there are many mitzvahs you can only Mekayim in Eretz Yisrael. Mitzvahs that Pliyas Ba'aretz, you can only Mekayim them in Eretz Yisrael. I want to go into Eretz Yisrael, La'aretz, Kadeshish Kaim Ukul, and I should be able to fulfill all the mitzvahs of the Torah, not only the ones that you can fulfill in Chutz La'aretz, but even the ones that are only fulfilled in Eretz Yisrael. What do you want? You want to get schar for doing the mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael? Malini Alecha, I will consider it for you, Kilo Asisim, as if you actually did them. Don't worry about it. Even though you can't come into Eretz Yisrael, I'll consider it because you desire to do the mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. I'll consider it as if you from the kind of mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar Lachein Achalek Lo Barab. Therefore, I will distribute to him among many. Vesatsumim, and for the mighty ones, Yichalek Shal, he will get the spoils. We'll see what this means in a minute. Tachas Hasher Lamav Sasha, because he was willing to pour himself out to death for Bnei Israel. As we'll see, he was willing to die for Bnei Israel. There's poshim him that he counted himself among the sinners. Nisa, he bore the sins of the whole nation. Well, the poshim yafkia, he interceded on behalf of the sinners. Right. So it says, I will distribute him among the many. Maybe like the later leaders of Bnei Israel, not like the earlier ones, like Avram Sakamilomar. I will divide the spoil. I will give him the spoils like the mighty ones. Who are the mighty ones? Like the early ones. Who are mighty b'Torah of mitzvahs, the greatest people of Bnei Israel, the forebears of Israel. Tachas Asher, because he poured himself out to death for he was willing to give up his life for Bnei Israel. He was willing to give himself up to death. Wipe me out, kill me, get rid of me if you're not going to listen to what I'm going to do. He was willing to die for Bnei Israel. He was counted He was counted himself among those who sinned and died in the Midbar. And he bore the sins of many. Shekiper al Masa Egel. He atoned for the Masa Egel. By atoning for Bnei Israel, he basically bore their sins. And he interceded on behalf of the sinners. He begged mercy for the sinners. He begged mercy to encourage them to do tshuva. Tefillah is davening for them, interceding on their behalf. Al tispalo b'adam hazeh, don't pray for this nation. Don't spam. Al tisa b'adam, and don't carry on for them. Al tisa b'adam rina tefillah, and don't carry on for them with song and prayers, supplications. Al tifkabi, and don't make any intercession on their behalf with me. Don't even try to intercede on their behalf. So you see that lashon of kia is a lashon of interceding on their behalf, praying for them. Tomorrow's daf, first day of the last day of Yantav, Shiur Pesach is Yud Daled. Picks it up from here, the beginning of the parak. When we start talking about the carbon that the Sota brings, it's important to learn that this daf because on Thursday, Meretz Hashem, on Isru Chag, we'll learn Daf Tesvav from the fourth line. The fourth line on Tesvav, we'll pick it up from there. Again, we're talking about the carbon mincha that you have to bring, that the Sota has to bring. And as I mentioned before, I'll put up Daf Yud Dalet and Daf Tesvav today on the podcast for those who keep 2 days and want to maybe learn to get ahead. Learn today Daf Yud Dalet and Tesvav. On Thursday, Meretz Hashem and Isru Chag, we'll pick it up from Daf Tesvav on the fourth line. Chag Sameach L'Kulam Surot Tovot.
One more time, thank you.
It says Moshe Rabbeinu didn't carry the Aron. They came to him and said, "We're tummy. It's not our fault. That's why Pesach Sheni came." They were tummy. They were the ones carrying the Aron.
What do you mean carrying it? Which ark? The
Aron
ark.
of Yaakov.
The people were picked by Pesach Sheni.
Yeah, that Pesach Sheni. But what does that have to do with what we're
Moshe
talking about?
Rabbeinu didn't carry the Aron himself.
Right. Yeah.
Other people carried the Aron of Yaakov.
Right.
The Gemara is